Hi, Mark. This week we've got some questions for you from our online members. They're quite a range of questions, and they don't sort of fit into any specific category, but they're quite interesting, sort of covering a diverse range of areas. They're going to talk or ask you to talk about the difference between lunging and long reining and which is better, and talking about how a horse moves into a person and how to get them directing a bit better, whether a baby brain can cause some types of behaviour, and hypersensitivity in cycling mares and how we can adjust our training for that if we need to, in fact.
Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
So the first question comes from Lisa, and she says, Mark, my horse has improved so much through your training. My barn manager even notices how much more calm he is. I am thrilled. Now, Lisa would like to start lunging or long reining him, and she'd like to know if one is better suited for her horse than the other, or perhaps is it better to start with one before the other? Just a bit of background. Her horse is very forward. He's an off-the-track thoroughbred, very opinionated. It takes a lot to keep his attention, but that's improving. He's very inconsistent in his behaviour. One moment he can be chill and compliant, and the next he can be antsy and completely ignore her. He gets irritated with too much repetition. So her main concern is his ability to get a downward transition at a distance. She can put a feel on the rope from a short distance, and he steps in towards her and keeps going. He can trot a very small circle very fast. Would long reining give her better control, or does she need to train him to be responsive on a single line first? And if she started with lunging, what would tell him to make a downward transition? He's very happy to take off ahead of her and has no problem leading into lunging. Perhaps is there a video that she can watch? Thank you.
Well, I think I'll answer the question and then work out the videos you can watch, because he's off the track horses. A lot of off the track horses I meet, they've been sent round on a lunge, in a circle, in a round pen, however, and you see it's a go-to, a very strong go-to in a lot of people, but on the track horses tend to do it very well. So they just kind of run a little bit sort of mindlessly around in a circle. So every time you sort of get to a point you're on a long line, the horse is going to go automatically in this kind of robotic round, round, round. Okay, so now should you do long reining because it's going to be more effective and help with this problem? Yeah, of course, long reining would really help, but it's not going to make his leading any better, and it's not going to make him lunge any better if we don't address that problem either. So long reining is a great way of getting a horse to softly process the ropes and things like that and become very comfortable with pressure, doing things more cautiously, having more responsibility, not just going away from pressure, and it teaches them to process the pressure that's right there. So it's going to be great for him. So I'd encourage to do long reining and look at all the long reining videos that I've got about bracing horses, all sorts of, you just go through them and work out, which one's going to suit you. I'd rather people look at them and go, yeah, maybe that's a bit too out of my pay grade right now, but this one here is probably good. Okay, so then I'm going to go back and address the lunging and the leading. Okay, if a horse knows how to lead, it doesn't rush on a lunge. Now, how do I lunge horses? I lead them out onto a lunge, but I don't send a horse out that doesn't know how to lead. You're probably a perfect question, because I've just finished I've been home for a little bit, but I've just had a clinic in Queensland with a horse that did exactly the same thing. And it was a horse that was a warm-blooded dressage horse, and they'd had it tied down in gear. It done a lot of circles, So every time it gets out on a circle, it just turns into this train, bends its head in, and you're like, well, can I adjust that? Not really. So I narrowed it right back down to say, can you lead up? Can you slow down? Can you lead up? Can you slow down? Can you lead up? Can you slow down? Just beside us, so it could jog up, and then I'd pull back and get it to slow down until, if you watch the knot that hangs underneath the horse's chin, it's like a pendulum. As that goes forward, the horse catches up with it. As it comes back, it slows down, and until it's like floating above that knot, jogging up, slowing down into a walk, into a back up, jogging up, and sometimes it might take you 2 weeks to lead, and your horse just like till it floats on that rope. Because when you get a horse out on a long line and you pick a feel up on that rope, it's not going to work, because if the horse doesn't really respond softly to that, we can't expect it to respond out on a 20-meter line or 10-meter ropes. So basically, it has to be very tuned into the feel of that rope. So that's why I don't send horses out with pressure and catch them with the rope, because it's just, if you can't lead your horse out, well, how are you going to lead it back? And that's the problem you're having. I can't lead that horse back down through its transitions into a walk, and things like that. So when the horse is real floaty on that rope, then you might send it out a little bit and then bring it straight back, and then send it out a little bit and bring it straight back. And then you might go out a little bit and then slow down, and then you might push the knot up, walking, maybe the horse is only 2 or 3 meters away from you, and you might lift that rope forward and it speeds up a little bit at the walk, and then you bring the rope back and it slows down a bit at the walk. And then you send it further and further out till it's out at 5 meters. But you've got to, if you want a horse to follow the feel of at the rope, it's got to do a degree in leading before you can expect it to follow the feel at 10 meters. And I think the problem with most lunging techniques is they send them out blind, and then sort of just hopefully they can hold onto them on the rope. Okay.
So in her particular instance, she just needs to focus on improving the leading and not worry about lunging. Certainly not, because that's a refined technique. You'd actually do that more at an advanced stage by the sounds of it. But long reining might be helpful to her if she wanted to look into that.
Yeah, you can do the long reining separate from the leading, but it's not going to fix that. It'll help a bit with the leading, but it's not going to make you fix the leading yourself either. Like you won't master it if you're not practicing it as well. Same with the horse. So you got to look at it that as it's also your skill set that's going to improve.
So you need to look at those look at the long reining, but also look at the leading videos. Although you may think the horse can lead, believe me, there are layers and layers and layers to leading. It's a fine art. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. It's from Lynn, who's in country Australia. She's got a paint gelding who's just under 2 years old, but huge, lovely paint gelding. She's been doing lots of leading with him, but just occasionally she's noticing there's a bit of resistance there. So his neck posture, or he might be leaning inwards. And what she's finding now is that when she's turning him to the right, unless it's where he wants to go, he sort of cuts in towards her. He understands the ask, but she's just not quite sure how to get him to turn, sort of to execute the turn nicely. Have you got any tips for her?
So I do a lot now, a lot more than I used to, getting them to lift and float. So lift the wither up and float across. So basically I'll stand with my shoulder very close to the horse, and I'll hold on to the knot, and I'll just push their head up, maybe give it a little bump to wake up, and then I'm actually pushing my arm out and across and waiting, and their head might go out and hold up a little bit, and they'll get a little bit stuck, but you hold that brace there for a while, and you wait on them, and then all of a sudden they'll start to relax their body and trying to adjust themselves to find the comfortable position. And what that turns into later on an indirect rein that moves the shoulders out of a circle. So when you pick up on the horse, pick up against its jaw, it just starts to move out around. And I'd practice that slideways movement or sideways movement till the horse lifts and rolls over and goes over to the side. So you're pushing them out to the side. You're standing solid and you're just lifting and pushing your arm out until they float out, and they can float around you softly. And that, from that position there, then you'll kind of put a twist in the rope to catch their hindquarter and get them to sort of do a hindquarter yield. So you move the shoulders over, and then you might do a hindquarter yield. And then what usually happens when you practice that lesson, they'll start to shape and get soft around you. Okay. So part of it's the walking by lesson. The other part of it is you've seen me work on some brace on some horses as a camp draft mare on the videos, where I'm actually kind of lifting and getting her to free up and loosen and then move across and float, freeing up the shoulders, lifting the wither, anything like that. Look at those ones. There's, I think, one of our horses at home some years ago in Mudgee, where I'm just getting him to lift and float the shoulders over and get them really, really good at that. And then what that does is when they walk a circle, they'll just loosen up, look into the turn, and they'll be nice and soft. And then from that, then you'll start to draw them back in, maybe to turn in towards you, because they're already soft. But the main thing you're looking for is not just the letting go of the brace and the floating. It's also, where are their thoughts? If the horse's thoughts are out, then a lot of times they fall in when we pull the rope, because they just kind of fall in looking to the outside. So that's always a problem. But these close in hand lessons, the horse will get more engaged, more thoughtful, and you might find the thoughts are in the right spot when you start to lead them to the inside.
Okay, and I've got a question next from Kerry from Australia. She's having trouble with her horse. She's often chomping on the bit. She puts her head up and she has a tendency to pull. Now, after years of trying different ways to fix all of these, it's still there. Can you just explain what might be happening, what she could do to tackle that just very quickly?
Well, a lot of answers in is what's an alternative to going forwards, going backwards, okay? So a horse that pushes and leans into the bit has got a strong thought. The thoughts are over there ahead. So you have to master the backup. So you can do it in long range. You can firstly get them just in hand and back them until their thoughts are backing. So you pick up a feel, you push until they back up, you loosen a little, let them catch up with themselves. If they push forward again, you push again and back. Teach your horse to back until it's amazing at floating backwards and thinking backwards, until you can touch on that rope and the horse will go from a forward thought to a backwards thought and be able to move its body accordingly. You're taking all that push out of the horse by teaching it to back up softly, okay? The other thing is lots of like soft hindquarter yields. If the horse is stuck in the hind feet, you might get them to lead around, do some hindquarter yields. So, and that can also translate under saddle. You know, on a horse that pushes a lot, you might pick up that indirect rein, doesn't matter which one, you know, you've got to get both of them done. Bend the horse around and lift up on that rein like towards your chin sort of thing up through the middle of your body and wait on the horse until it releases the hindquarter and moves that hindquarter around a little bit, and do that on both sides until you can feel the horse thinking into the rein, releasing the hindquarter. And then you might do some backing and do some more backing and do some more backing until the horse understands that backing up is very easily accessible. It's what the horse can access easily in movement will help it think in that direction a lot quicker. So then when the horse has a sudden forward thought, you can replace it by saying, hey, come back here, back up a little bit. Okay. It's all about, you know, the old saying, feel, timing and balance. This is the balance part of it. You know, the balance of a soft forward. You can't have a soft forward without a soft backwards. You can't have a soft left turn without a soft right turn. You know, everything has to be balanced right. And I think if you really commit to it, a lot of people say, yeah, I've done a bit of backing and I'm back out on a trail ride tomorrow, but the horse has had 10 years of pushing out on trail rides. Well, that an hour of teaching it to back up doesn't weigh up to the 10 years of riding out with strong forward thoughts. So you might have tried a lot of techniques. Some of those techniques might have been completely correct. Some might have been incorrect. But did you commit to something long enough to get a true change in your horse? That's what I want you to really think about.
What about chomping on the bit? Is that something that you
chomping on the bit is a bit like having something in your way when your thoughts are still over there and stressing and just chomping, and it becomes a habit. So a lot of horses that have got a lot of bit stress, I'll take the bit out of their mouth, do it in a halter or side pull for a while, and then when they're really soft, you might go back to the bit if you wanted to.
And they've stopped chomping.
And they've stopped chomping. But yeah, basically, when a horse has a change of thought, you'll start to get closer to a change of emotion. And then when the emotion changes, the bit chomping, the stress will dissipate and the horse will become back into its center. Most bit chompers are here in the body, there in the mind, here in the mind and body.
Yeah, right. Okay. There you go, Kerry. That's interesting for you. All right. We've done some technical questions. We're going to move on to some hypothetical theory questions. Mark, can you please explain the difference between a horse hunting for a reward, like a treat, or finding the answer on their own? Does that create a different sort of result? You know, is the horse more confident if they do one rather than the other?
Yeah. The thing, and it's always a hard, I'm not going to go on the, you know, the pros and cons of, you know, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, but when a horse is hunting a reward, its mind is in the future, and you can see it's got a sort of target behavior, and you can see the level of anxiety in it will be slightly higher because it's kind of thinking, how can I get that answer? So you know, they'll be going to, most horses that hunt a reward tend to have a bit of a, like, as I said, target. So they'll target a mounting block. They'll go to the mounting block. Like, I've got to go to the mounting block, or I'll go to that, or I'll go to that. They're not just sort of searching and processing. So a horse, when say if we've created something to create a search in a horse, well, the search is there. The horse is searching. So it's just taking on what's happening in front of it as it's happening. The problem with the treat, it's in front of the horse. What I mean is, in the mind of the horse, having that treat still hasn't happened, which means it's doing the task, but its mind is ahead of the task onto what may happen, which it wants to happen, which is the treat. So that's why they're not as careful on their tasks. They don't step on the mounting block, or they don't step on the platform as softly. They don't sidle up to the mounting block as softly. They don't go over the obstacle as softly, because their mind is on something ahead of the obstacle.
Right.
Okay. So they they tend to sometimes get in a habit of rushing to get to the treat. So, I've gone in the float now. I didn't really think about the scary things because I was actually thinking about something else when I went past the scary things, and that thing might have been the treat. So when you start using treats to get horses to do difficult things and some obstacles that could be quite frightening, you have to be very careful that their mind is on the obstacle, not on the reward. So people have a problem with negative reinforcement as they put too much stress in the pressure that motivates the horse to search. So the horse is running away from something in the past. So they're either going to a treat in the future, missing the point of the obstacle, or running away from something in the past and missing the obstacle. So whichever way you do it, you have to be careful. The reason I prefer creating a stimulant to get the horse to search is I'm watching for a soft mind that's searching properly. And then I know the horse is exactly on the task, not ahead of the task.
Wow. Yeah, amazing. Okay. Next question is about cycling mares. This question comes from a lady who's got a horse who can be hormonal for an awfully long time in the summer. And she's noticed that when she cycles, she can be quite difficult to train. And it can take her an hour and a half to get her to stand calmly and self-regulate, let alone, riding. So she has tried different supplements and things like that. But she's wondering, have you dealt with this sort of hypersensitivity in hot cycling mares? Do you have any recommendations so that she's not... So actually, I will go back and give you a bit more of a background on her. Because she can get quite frightened of everything. And so, this is all sort of linked a little bit to it. And she's quite new to your teachings. It's a very sensitive 7-year-old Dutch warm blood mare who was raised on direct pressure. She didn't realise, so that's fine. Now she's following the feel and she's doing her leading so that when they lead it, they join together. And the focus is on her and what's external. And she's made huge differences in her insecurity and her openness. And now the mare is actually looking to her for leadership under saddle. So interestingly, Mark, your approach has also made her become much more aware of what she's thinking and feeling, which of course is what we're all about. So well done, Melissa. So yeah, she'd just like to know about, considering that she's looked into this mare in quite a lot of detail and how she's coping with things, this insecurity that she has, but noticing that when she is cycling, it does create a sort of level of chaos to what's going on. Have you got any tips for her on that front?
Yeah, some horses, and I've met horses over the years, I think, and also you mentioned that, when she's in the summertime, it's almost like she's in season all the time sort of thing. And I have met mares that at clinics that lactate all the time and like all these sort of different sort of hormonal things that, I above my sort of expertise in the sense of if it's a physical kind of thing. But there's a lot of things out there that we come across that people will come to me to clinic and say, oh, well, this happens. I have problems when it's springtime because there's lots of spring grass and the spring grass makes my horse crazy. And there are links to certain grasses and sugars in grasses or whatever chemicals in grasses that can cause horses to be a little bit. But in most cases, when I look at the horses in the paddock in springtime, they're eating grass and standing under a tree and they play a bit and they gallop around and they do the same thing. It's only when the person rides them that it looks like the horse has had spring grass. But when the person's not on the horse is not having any spring grass syndrome happening to it. And so it's something to do with the anxiety and the extra sugar and energy to support that anxiety. Okay. So it's not spring grass, it's the problem. Cycling, same thing. It can be that it's not the cycling that's the problem. It's the horse, yes, has more sensitive, just like people are more sensitive. Some people are more hormonal than others and they get very sensitive and you just got to back off and just give them a little bit of space. But they don't turn into lunatics, okay? They don't just suddenly completely, unless they got bipolar or something where they need to be medicated. It's just, you just got to be a little careful. So their emotions are a little bit more sort of easily triggered. Now, so, you're making good progress in the winter. You're sort of working in when the horse is more able to process more and be less sensitive to certain stimulants. That's great. But when I watched the little video of you riding, and I'll just explain it, what I saw was this was a horse that you said this is when she's in a good moment. And I saw her going, wow, she's really troubled by pressure. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
So, and I know you've done a really good job and there's probably, I don't want to make you feel bad, but you're working on awareness, her awareness of you, your awareness of her, things like that. That's great. The connection and safety she has with you, that's great. That's always going to improve what you're doing. But it's her relationship with pressure that's going to be the key. Okay, because if you're sensitive and you're having a hormonal time, and the pressure, so sensory processing. I don't know if anyone knows a bit about sensory processing, but if you meet some people with sensory processing, say they walk into a crowd of people and they sort of get really anxious about it, then they sort of start to get itchy, or they kind of whatever it is, or their jumper gets more scratchy, and more irritable and things like that. And so I'm guessing what happens with a horse is when they go into, when they're a bit more hormonal, when they're in season, their senses are a little higher. So, and if they're anxious, that turns into sensory processing. So the bit, the legs, the pressure that's on her creates all this stimulant. And because she doesn't truly understand it, and it's not creating a clear clarity, like a real clarity and softness in her, and a change of thought. And remember, like, a good change of thought is a change of emotion. Then basically the pressure is just a stimulant that would be adding to the worry cup. So it kind of gets worse when she's in season. Okay, so what I want you to sort of look at, going by the video I saw, is she's got to be a lot more connected with the pressure that you guide her with, the legs and the hands under saddle, same with the leading on the ground. So what I saw is the reins, the bit was, she was kind of chomping the bit a little bit. She was kind of, and she was looking out a bit. She was kind of going your way, but she just wasn't quite there. And you were working on slowing her down. I would say close the reins more, slow her down, back her up till she has a change of a thought. Her mind comes back, loosen the rein, let her stand still and be present with you. And every time you touch the reins, touch them to get a 100% change of thought until you get a 100% change of thought with a change of emotion. What I mean with a change of emotion is, some people go, like, an example of a change of a thought without a change of emotion is, oh yeah, I'm going right, I'm thinking right, I'm thinking right. We pull the left rein and the horse goes, oh, I'm thinking left, I'm thinking left, I'm thinking left, I'm thinking right. They're still kind of out there. You might have changed their thought and gone from thinking right to thinking left when you picked up the left rein, but they're just gazing off over there to the left going, oh yeah, I'm going left now, but they're not really soft. So you've got to slow that emotion down, bring it back and say, reset center. Now let's go again. And when you squeeze her with your legs, you squeeze her until she goes, oh, would you like me to go this much? Yeah, just that. Just take a step. Just watch out, because we're looking over the Grand Canyon. I just want to look over the edge. I don't want to fall off. Look after me. We don't want to crash. So I'll look after you. You look after me. So every feel you put on your horse is accounted for. And she responded with the correct response, not just, yep, that means go forward. Oh, yep, slowing down, but my mind's out there. My feet are slowing down, but my mind's out there. Okay. So be very clear until those reins help her feel good and you don't have to contain her. Okay. So you want to be able to let her out on a loose rein and she can walk softly, slowly. She can speed her up without us going faster and faster. When you pick up on the rein, she slows down very softly. I mean, that's just one area, but really get that working really nice until the reins are less of a trap, more though a pathway.
I'll just backtrack again, because she did say that she takes dressage lessons. Many trainers have tried to settle her, but to no avail. Her go-to is spookiness with a huge jump sideways and then run for the hills. This has been her escape for years, and she thought she was doing it just to get out of work. But now she can give her a totally loose rein, even under pressure, and let her commit to the mistake and bring her back down by walking the bubble. So she's not holding on to her stress as well. And so that's good. She is making some changes, but there's quite a lot in there, isn't there?
Yeah, as long as you let them have a mistake, but then you want to guide them into safety. Like sometimes if you just let them process what just happened, I would say, let them make a little mistake, let them sort of veer off, do whatever, and then guide them and make sure, but you've got to guide them and make sure that you've made a clear change. And I think, like a horse at the recent clinic, the owner had tried lots of ways to sort of bring her horse down when it gets hot or worried and stuff like that. And she'd done all this sort of stuff through her horsemanship life with a horse. And she said, you just blow me away. I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you just told me to hold a rein and now our horse has changed. And I've been doing all this stuff. And I said, yeah, but you were doing all this stuff and you were holding the reins and doing things with all your tools. But it was just the way you had to hold the rein and how long you had to hold it until you got a clear change in your horse. It wasn't about the exercise or the pattern or anything. It was how well you held that rein to get a change of emotion. And then I might have held the rein when I rode a horse. Like I did ride a horse, and this is what I want to bring to your horse is I sat on a horse and I held the rein and I kept doing the same question for about half an hour. can you trust this? Can you trust this? No, that's not that. No, I don't want you to turn. I don't want you to turn. You're just turning automatically like a robot. No, don't turn. Can you trust this? Can you follow it? No, that's not following it. That's just kind of anticipating. And then I kept doing it and holding that rein till the horse went, oh, well, you just want me to kind of look into there and just step a little bit and follow that like I'm following my best friend's hand to a surprise party. Yes, that's what I want. Well, no one's ever showed me that. They've just wanted me to turn or go sideways or go backwards. And I said, yeah, but I don't want you to move away from pressure. I want you to move towards feel. And as soon as that horse learnt to move towards feel, everything changed and it trusted her. Yeah. It said, I trust you now because now I'm following your guidance, not moving away from pressure.
Yeah.
And that's the game changer. So
it's the game changer. Okay, final question is from Mary. And she is having some great success with your training too, Mark. She said that she's so grateful that she's found your program. She watches it for hours and now she's having so many results. It's so exciting. But she has a quick question. She's got a gelding. She would like to know if upending feed buckets and water buckets is the result of a baby brain habit.
Yeah, well, a playful baby brain. Yeah, horses play, pick up buckets, throw them around, Some people put a lot of toys in their paddock, balls and stuff to keep their horse's brain stimulated and stuff like that. And horses can be like cats with a ball, they can run around and, play with it and have fun and stuff like that. Just like you see horses out in the paddock, playing. And I find over the years watching different horses, I think the geldings and stallions tend to be playful for longer than maybe the fillies and the mares. They tend to be a bit more like, rough and tumble and stuff like that. And I think sometimes they hold onto a baby brain a bit longer. Now, it's not about taking that off of them. It's about when and when not, because you can't always let curiosity be, oh, let's poke this, prod this, throw this, pick up that. Okay, curiosity has to be like so a playful curiosity is just doing something without any, sometimes they can be a bit cautious, but, it's just playing, doing something. Cautious curiosity is when the horse is going, okay, I've got to process this as in this is a real life situation, not a game. So when we train horses, we don't want too much of the playful, just play brain because it's not the right soft mindset a horse needs to be in to stand quietly, process all the new information and learn from it. Though it's good to have that time off and play, it's good. But in sense of upending buckets and stuff, yeah, it's a baby brain, it's a playful brain, it's okay. But you can't just have that sort of brain all the time when you start to go into teaching it to learn, whether it be leading, riding, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So at the moment she's holding the feed in a bucket for him. She's holding the bucket so he doesn't tip it over. We used to use tire feeders. You might find a heavier feeder.
Yeah, heavier feeders. And some horses just do that. They get into it. The problem I have with like habit, like this is the hard thing, and it's very hard. It's the same difficulty being a parent as a horse owner. Should I let that? Should I not let that? We're always questioning that all the time. I had a horse go on a float the other day. I had 3 horses I had to load and help load at a clinic, and it was just like bang, bang, one after the other, and all the floats are there. And one horse was the frozen horse, so it's like fully frozen. All the floats around it can't move. So I had to work on it unfreezing to negative pressure because, negative floats, negative pressure. I mean, not adding or minus like negative and positive reinforcement. I mean negative as in a negative feeling, like a bad feeling. So all these floats, all this pressure, I'm frozen, I don't know what to do. So I had to create a negative stimulant until the horse turned it into searching and being soft around kind of what it felt bad to. But another horse had impulsive thoughts, strong impulsive thoughts, much what a baby brain can cause if we allow it to go too far. So this horse had nervous impulsive thoughts. So it wasn't baby brain, but it was still, I see that happening in the throwing feed buckets and stomping things and doing things like that. They take that, what they're learning in their play, and they turn it when they're anxious into stomping a float. I don't like that. I'm going to stomp it. I'm going to pick up that. I'm going to throw it, or I'm going to do this. And it becomes more like maybe a tantrum response. So if we see playfulness getting too big all the time and too common, then the horse is not stimulated in other ways enough, and it's using them as displacement behavior like habits, addictions, things like that, because there's not enough other stimulant in their life. So, if you've got the PlayStation and nothing else, you're going to play the PlayStation, but we can't say stop playing the PlayStation because there's nothing else. You've got to have an alternative. So sometimes horses can, so this is why some people, they put these playthings in the horse's paddock, and the horse runs around, throws this and picks up that, and it's all fun and games until you want the horse to go into a stressful environment and be soft and cautious. And then all of a sudden, all that stuff that they're doing out there turns into a negative thing. At a clinic, I'll finish off, I won't go too far with this, but years ago, and I think I've said this on a podcast before, I was at a clinic. It was in Glen Innes. It was probably, a long, long time ago, over a decade ago, I suppose. Yeah, because we've been in Mudgee over 10 years. So the horse is drinking at the dam and it started splashing. And the lady was beside me and she said, "Oh, it's nice to let him express itself, just have a bit of fun and express himself." And I just sort of nodded and went, mm-hmm. And then a few other horses started to splash, and it was all fun and games and, all a bit of fun, and everyone laughs at it and goes, "Oh, that's nice and cute." Anyway, the next day we're riding along and this other horse rides up a little bit beside the horse. The horse spun around and double barreled the horse beside it. And I rode up beside her and I said, "It's nice to let your horse express itself, isn't it?" And it was a quiet sort of, and she had to think about that. And it's all nice to see a horse play, and I'm not against it, but everything has to have boundaries and balance in our training. Otherwise, we get the wrong balance and turn that into a stressful situation, and then that all comes out. That expressive behaviour over exuberant behaviour comes out with anxiety inside it instead of, playfulness. It's anxiety, and then it can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, and the thoughtful behaviour is so important when they've got you, when they're carrying you.
Yeah, anything that's impulsive, whether it be happy stuff, impulsive behaviour, everything has to be balanced with caution. So
Mary, this is actually an opportunity for her to sort of perhaps introduce some boundaries if she feels unsafe at any time with that feed bucket. There shouldn't be any aggressive behaviour there, but other stimulation and also a heavier feed bucket might just help too, so you don't have to be there. One less thing. Okay, thank you so much, Mark, for all your answers. Thanks to all the questions that are coming through. Lots of amazingly interesting questions. They're super. Hope this has been helpful to you. We'll be back again next week.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everybody.
If you'd like to ask Mark your question and get his insights to help you and your horse, it's easy to join Mark Langley online. Head over to marklangley.com.au and hit join. It's less than a couple of coffees, and the Q&A is just a piece of a whole package designed to support you and your horse with great training.